Let's talk about leadership lessons from being widowed overnight, how life's hardest storms can unlock resilient, purposeful leadership. So, what happens when leadership chooses you in the middle of your greatest loss? So, let me take you on a journey with me. Several years ago, I was widowed overnight, totally blindsided, like being punched in your gut and your whole world changing in a matter of minutes, and you just having to figure out how to maneuver. So think of or picture this. You're away, you're at the one of the happiest times of your life. You're out of town and you're going to your first convention for your sorority. You're excited. You're with your line sisters and you're just taking it all in because this is your first experience. And your husband and daughter are back at home and they're doing well together, having their bonding time. And then it's a few days before you return back. And the schedule had been you get a call in the morning from your husband saying, "Hey, I dropped her off. Everything is good. Talk to you later." Well, that particular morning, there was no call. And I wondered why wasn't there a call? So, of course, I did what you do naturally. I called. No answer at my house, no answer on the work line. And I kind of brushed it off. We went to breakfast and still I had this confusion about why is there no message, no text message, no voicemail, no call. So continued throughout the day. And we were trying to do some shopping that day, but it just kept nagging at me. So I called my neighbor. My neighbor is like, "Oh, all the cars are there, but I haven't seen them today." I asked, knock on the door, no answer. Okay. So you just start playing through who else can I contact. So eventually I end up contacting his best friend and I say, "Hey, I need you to go to my house." And he says, "I don't have a key anymore." And I was like, "It doesn't matter if you have to break a window. I just need to know what's going on." And unfortunately, he found my husband at that time deceased and my daughter, who was 2 at the time, sitting there pretty much just exhausted. She was probably crying for who knows how long, and he found both of them. Well, needless to say, I'm out of town, states away, and when I get this news, we're on a bus. I believe we're trying to get back to the hotel, and I felt like everything was closing in on me. I felt like I was suffocating when I got the news. So my first reaction was to just get up and get off the bus. Well, I wasn't alone, so the person with me had to scurry very quickly to get off the bus because that wasn't our stop, and just try to regroup and figure out what to do next. Not clear-headed, just very confused, hurt, in denial, all the things that you would expect. But as a mother, you must know the ache I felt from my daughter at that time. I wasn't there and she needed me. And how do I get there? How do I make sure she's okay? So this is what I mean about thrown into or when leadership chooses you in the middle of your greatest loss. So now here I am transitioning to being the leader of my home. And one thing I want to remind you is storms don't diminish leadership, they reveal it. So I'm going to walk through a few lessons that I learned from being widowed overnight. First, leading beyond the title. Of course, we have all kind of titles in workplaces and even at home. Sometimes you're head of household, um, or you're uh, a manager, you're a leader, you're a supervisor, you're the shift lead, just different things. But in this particular instance, it was now trying to adopt the mindset of being the leader of the household as a single parent. So going from a mother-father situation with one child to now it's just the mom and a daughter. This wasn't about titles. This was really about how do I show up daily to ensure that my daughter had her needs met and that I could still live a viable life after this unfortunate event. So here it was, even when I was broken, trying to find the way to show up for both of us. That was my new responsibility. That was my new leadership activity. And leadership is who you are when the plan falls apart. So no one goes into a marriage thinking, okay, I'm going to end up by myself, be it the husband or the wife. No one goes into a marriage like that. Yeah, we take the vows to say for better or for worse till death do us part. But in reality, no one is going into a marriage saying, oh, well, they're going to die. I'm going to have to do this. And especially when you're younger, these are not the things that you're thinking of at all. So being mindful of the shifts in leadership that you have to make in a scenario like this wasn't just a shift in my household, but this was a shift in how I led in the organization. There were things that, maybe I can't do that now because now I have to leave by X time to pick up my daughter. Or, okay, you want me to travel? Well, I live in an area where I have no family. So now trying to figure out, well, how do I still do the things necessary for my job and to help my career grow, but also maintaining the head of the household status and number one being mom. So next, the strength of support. That's what we lead into. Relying on your inner circle. And I will tell you, yes, I had friends, but you don't realize who your true friends are or what you truly need until you're thrust into a situation and you recognize, number one, I can't do this all by myself. Number two, people are offering to help. And in this instance, it wasn't just, how we can say to people, well, how can I help you? Well, when you're grief stricken or just totally weighted down by some things going on in your life, you really don't know what help you need. You don't know what you're doing for the next moment. So when people ask that question, and most of the time the cliche response is, oh, I'm fine, or everything is okay. If I need anything, I'll reach out to you. It's not because the person doesn't want help. They don't even know what they need. And that's real because I didn't know what I need. But what I found was those in my inner circle, they would offer the things that I thought I needed or that they thought I needed. And then in return, it would make sense to me. Oh, yeah, I could use some help in that area. So there were instances where it was, okay, well, if you need to go on this business trip, then we know you have an extra car seat. We'll take the car seat and she can stay with us for that week while you have to travel. We'll get her to school. We'll pick her up, etc. The offer was extended. There were times where, okay, I know that you have sorority meeting on the first Saturdays. We're willing to watch her for you. So, just drop her off and she'll be fine. Pick her up whenever you're done. Or sometimes it was just, hey, I was taking a walk with the dog and I thought about you and your daughter. So I wanted to come by and check on you. So just that check-in, not knowing that you needed that special attention or the reminder that, okay, this is months after the funeral, people have stopped reaching out, people have stopped checking in, and then you get this knock on the door or you get a text message saying, thinking of you, just wanted you to know that you're on my mind, still here if you need anything, just wanted to check in. So things like that really helped a lot. So one thing I would remind you is leaders don't only give, they also receive. So in this instance, my inner circle was allowing me to receive. I've been pouring out, but now in this particular instance and during that time frame, I was receiving. And where can you allow more support? Sometimes you don't sit down and think of these things. And in this instance, I didn't have to necessarily think because my inner circle took charge so that I wouldn't have the pressure of trying to figure that part out. Another lesson I learned was resilience has been redefined, in my opinion. And I had to choose resilience over being stuck in emotions. Now, some people think of resilience, sometimes I think they think it's that you really don't feel, you kind of stifle things and you just trudge through and you just keep going and you just keep going. And for me, that's not what it is. Resilience was opening my eyes to understand that I had a lot of emotions and I had a lot of pain and I didn't like any of those feelings. So it was me recognizing those things. It was me recognizing that I needed rest. It was me recognizing that something has to change and let's figure out what that is because things are no longer going to go back to the way they were. So resilience is refusing to let pain have the final word. It doesn't mean you don't feel. Yes, you feel, you have all the emotions, but you don't get stuck there. You feel all those things. You go through the different stages of grief and all of that, but you don't get stuck. So, what I learned is I am more powerful than I give myself credit for. Now, another thing that I can say I learned during this time was the bold move of therapy. I know that a lot of people do not like to hear that word. They feel there's a stigma tied to it and all the things that we have been told over the years. But I will be uber honest with you. It is the best thing that I could have ever done because, again, I told you previously, I had a lot of emotions. And one of them was really anger because I didn't plan for this. So, what am I supposed to do now? And how dare you leave me? And now my daughter doesn't have a father. Like, what do you do? So, I had all of that pent up. And there was the hurt, and then also the concern about can I make it? Going forward as a single mom, all those things. And learning that it was okay to not be okay. Because we'll quickly say, I'm okay, and we're not okay. But during this time, I really understood it was okay for me not to be okay. So the insight for me here was that therapy is a bold leadership move that deepens wisdom and empathy. So your key takeaway at this point should be seeking help is not stepping down. It's stepping up into wholeness. And you have to do what you need to do to make yourself whole. The next lesson would be that stewardship in the storm. And in this particular instance, as I said, this happened overnight. There was no plan. So now having to adjust finances and investments to coincide with the new life. You went from a two-income household to a one-income household. At that time, if I recall correctly, I was not quite promoted yet. My promotion came a few months after becoming widowed. So for those first probably 3 or 4 months, I was assuming head of household in a non-managerial salary, and also assuming having to pay mortgage and childcare and all those things on my own. So having to then rethink some things regarding my finances, how I spent, where I spent, and most importantly, investments. It was eye-opening for me to realize at that point in life that yes, I had life insurance through my employer, but I needed to have a life insurance policy on my daughter, and I also needed to have a life insurance policy that was not tied to my employer. So making sure that those things were put in place so that if something, God forbid, were to happen to me, my daughter would be taken care of because I made those adjustments in financing and investments. And then the insight would be leading through crisis means aligning resources with reality, making those smart choices, and doing the things that are necessary for your family composition. What works for one doesn't necessarily work for the other. So know your numbers and know what you need. A challenge here is what resource adjustments are you resisting? Take the time to ponder this question and write those things down and then tackle them one by one. The next lesson I learned was grace over perfection. And this one is tough, and I still have to remind myself of this particular activity. I can be very hard on myself. And there's times when I'm like feeling, or especially at that point, it was just like, am I really a good mom? Am I doing the things I'm supposed to do? Am I making the right decisions for our household, for our future? And finally, I had to learn to extend myself grace when I felt like I was failing because the reality is there is no like one size manual on how to raise children. Yes, we get great guidance from the Bible, but all children are different, all parents are different, and the dynamics that make up those relationships are not the same in every single household. So, extending myself grace where, you know, I don't know if it was the right thing to do or not, but it was the only thing that I thought was the right thing to do at the time. And having the grace and the smart aptitude to just say, hey, if I made a mistake, then if this comes up again, then I can make adjustments because I know where I need to make adjustments. And reality is, leadership without grace becomes a burden. You cannot continue to beat yourself up because no one's perfect. And we learn and then we make adjustments and we move on. So progress, not perfection, sustains influence. The next lesson is the power of self-encouragement. And there's a song, that many of us know, speak life or encourage yourself, many things like that. But even in the word, it tells us to speak life over ourselves when no one else can. And being mindful of the words that come out of your mouth. It's very important because you can say things that have a rippling impact in a negative way, not realizing that you spoke that into existence. So it's important to make sure that you're speaking good things and you're speaking positive things and you're speaking things that will grow and flourish in a great way and not things that will drag you down or weigh you down or tear you down. So insight at this particular lesson was leaders must sometimes become their own encouragers. It's okay to encourage yourself. Yes, it's wonderful to receive encouragement from others, but always start with yourself. Always be able to tell yourself something positive and to push yourself along the way when you're feeling a little blue. So say it out loud with me. I am more powerful than I realize. Now, my next lesson is rest is revenue. Now, during this time, of course, you can imagine I had a lot of things on my mind, a lot of pressures and just decisions to make, deciding if, hey, I was even going to stay in the state that we were living in, or was I going to move back home and be closer to family? Just so many things to decide. Would I stay in that same house? Would I move to another neighborhood? Just multiple things. And this would keep me up at night. And normally I'm pretty good on my sleep, but at this particular time, what I noticed is I would wake up and of course it would be quiet in the house, but my mind would be racing. So I would look around and say, I have to make changes. Things cannot look the same because they're no longer the same. So I would be steaming border off the wall at 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning. I wanted to paint because I needed things to look differently. So at times I was painting swatches on my bedroom wall just to figure out, well, what color do I want it to be? So anyone, if you had gone in my bedroom, and probably were thinking she is losing her mind. But I was not. It was just my way of coping at the time. And the one thing I noticed was my diminished sleep had started to elevate my blood pressure and I was having headaches. Now, me personally, I have always been a pretty spot on regular person when it comes to my pressure, like a 120 over 70, 120 over 68 kind of situation. So seeing numbers above that had me concerned and those headaches were really unpleasant. So in speaking with my doctor, I remember she said she wanted to give me sleeping pills, and I was adamant. Oh, no, absolutely not. We can't do that. Now, you remember, did you forget that I'm a single parent? I can't be sleep knocked out and have a 2-year-old who I don't hear. And she assured me it was going to be the lowest dose, and I just needed to get my sleep pattern back and didn't have to sleep. I didn't have to use this for the rest of my life. I pushed back and I pushed back, and finally I said, okay, you know what? I'll try it. I will try it. So I did try it. I think I took the pills 2 or 3 nights. It regulated me back into a sleep pattern, and then I never took them again. So understanding that rest is revenue, because if you deplete too much, then it's going to cause you physical issues, it will cause you emotional issues, and it will cause you mental issues. Things will just start to break down. So rest is not luxury, it's leadership capital. And when leaders neglect their rest, their health and their effectiveness pays the price. So the key takeaway here is rest is revenue. Your body is not an expense account, it's your biggest asset. So today we talked about leading beyond the title, the strength of support, resilience redefined, The Bold Move of Therapy, Stewardship in the Storm, Grace over Perfection, The Power of Self-Encouragement, and finally, Rest is Revenue. I close with saying, leadership isn't about avoiding storms. It's about anchoring yourself enough to stand through them. My storm was becoming widowed overnight. Yours may look different, but the truth remains you are stronger, wiser, and more resilient than you know. Lead your life, lead your circle, lead with courage, and remember, rest is revenue. Until next time, keep shining.